We have some stupid fucking idioms in our language. Have you ever bothered to think about how ridiculous and nonsensical some of the metaphors and idioms that we use are? Example, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Well, why not? Why the fuck would I ask for a cake if I couldn't fucking eat it? Turns out what this idiom actually translates to is you can't both retain your cake while eating it. And that makes 1,000 times more sense because it's not implying that whenever I go and order a cake from Dairy Queen, go home, and sit down to eat it, that a cop spears me through my window, puts me in a full Nelson, and stomps on my cake all because I'm an anime fan. Anywho, you can't have your cake and eat it too is a prime example of an idiom that, despite being ambiguously worded, is widely used and both its meaning and connotation are well understood. Now, if we gobble up a couple of full-size wedding cakes and move down the spectrum of questionable applications of the English language, we'll notice both a rise in temperature and a dead end. Ah! What do you know? We've reached the burned bridges. Unfortunately, because the bridge to the rest of the spectrum is burned, we're unable to get to those idioms on the other side of the spectrum. I wonder what could have possibly been over there. Who knows? I've heard there's a plethora of people attempting to build that bridge right now. Unfortunately, the construction's being slowed by morons that instead of helping with the construction of the bridge are decorating other bridges while screaming that all the bridges matter in an attempt to pull people off of the main one. Some bridges can be rebuilt. Burned bridges often implies that this connection, friendship, or a pathway of understanding that the bridge symbolizes is permanently lost, and frankly, that's just not true for all situations, such as the bridge to the other ends of the idiom spectrum. Romantic relationships, however, are a little different, and no music video makes this more apparent than the 2012 Vocaloid song Fairytale. Wait, that's a Vocaloid?
The robots are becoming human!
I love this damn song. I mean, that's probably pretty obvious since I'm making a video on it and it made my top 10 songs of the decade list. But I also love the music video for its shrewd tactics and its mature perspective on the topic of romantic breakups. Fairytale tells the story of a former couple that happens to meet up in a cafe and decides to catch up with one another. The conversation is going well until the ex-boyfriend asks about what appears to be a wedding ring on the ex-girlfriend's right hand. Specifically, the guy asks who gifted the ring to the female, to which she replies, myself. Yeah, She then notes that the ring is again on her right hand, which is supposed to be significant as in Western culture wedding rings are worn on the left hand. Note, I said supposed to be significant because both the male and any viewer with two working eyes can immediately tell that this girl is lying. The female, in an attempt to change the subject, offers to sweeten the male's drink. The male refuses, pours the sweetener himself, and states that he can't drink unless the beverage is sweetened like usual. This need to have a sweetened drink in and of itself is important and reoccurs at a latter portion of the conversation, but more interesting here is the female's response. Right, same as usual. I wonder if it ever changes. Here is where the thesis of the video starts to unfold. So far, we have a coincidental interaction that seemingly occurred due to a prayer to God, as suggested by the prelude of the song, a female we suspect to be lying about her engagement status, and said female making a callback to a previous point within the ex-couple's relationship, wondering if the dynamic of the relationship will ever change. This is our first checkpoint. From this point on, the conversation turns into a rather playful exchange of post-breakup experiences littered with analyses of body language, symbolism, and a spree of recollection. At a point during the conversation, the female asks if the male is living with anyone, to which he replies yes, sending the female into a temporary cardiac arrest. To her relief, the male then states that he simply adopted a cat to combat a feeling of loneliness, implying rather blatantly that the female was the one to initiate the breakup. Eventually, the male states that the cafe is noticeably dead, and the female realizes that the shop is closing within the next month. Ironically, the male then counters what the female stated earlier about everything being the same as usual when he states, things are rapidly changing. Conversation points and patience on both sides begins to wane as time progresses, and this is signified by the ice melting in the male's cup. Furthermore, the longer they're together, the lesser the male begins to feel about himself, as he again denounces only drinking sweet beverages with straws, that he wasn't manly enough to keep her attracted. This time, however, the female doesn't reminisce about the couple's past. Rather, she attempts to comfort the male, with her head tilted downwards and eyes raised as if to suggest that she feels guilty about the ex-boyfriend's lacking self-esteem. This, again, another sign that she was indeed the one to end the romantic relationship and is now experiencing a sense of regret. Checkpoint 2. The music video enters its final symbolism-filled arc with a shocking request by the male. He asks that if the female is indeed not married, that she moves the ring onto her left hand. And we see that she does indeed do this. However, we see the male congratulate her, seeming to suggest that she revealed her actual engagement status. Regretfully, she says that the ex-couple's relationship isn't sweet anymore, that she'd have been better off submerging the ring in black coffee, and that the next time the ex-couple meets, the ring will be on her left hand, which either means 1, she will keep it on her left hand as a mementos of the male, or 2, which is more likely, is that she's getting married, thus the next time the ring will have to stay on her left hand by obligation. Regardless of which of these is true, the thesis is still the same. In life, you have to burn bridges that sometimes can't be rebuilt. I wonder if it ever changes. When a relationship is broken or a bridge between two islands is burnt, one thing is apparently clear. The bridge isn't catching fire on its own. Somebody has to spark the flames that incinerate the connection, the bridge across the two islands. And when that happens, it's impossible for things not to change. Things are rapidly changing. You can't be the one that both calls off the relationship and defines the new meeting point for you and your ex-partner. You can't both burn the bridge and meet in the middle of it. You can't free yourself of the emotional obligations of a relationship and wish to remain comforting, cherishing, and standing as an important emotional piece in someone else's life. You can't have your cake and eat it too. At the end of the music video, the female asks if wearing the ring on her left hand will allow the two to meet again. The answer to which is no, but not wearing it in this particular case wouldn't change anything. The two coincidentally met at a desolate cafe that is closing within a month's time, symbolizing the close of the safe space, the close of their relationship together. In the video, when the female asks if the male is living with anyone and his reply stuns her, the lyrics of the song are, "There's no color that's easily dyed white." They aren't sweet anymore. The female has chosen to enjoy her life with someone else, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, attempting to be significantly and emotionally involved within the life you brought heartbreak to is simply unfair and cruel. It's wrong. It's not something you, the person who lit the bridge on fire, gets to decide. I get there's no color that's easily dyed white, that no matter what happens, you will still have some level of emotional connection and desire to be with this person on the other island. But that alone doesn't give you an entrance into their life. Oftentimes, after burning a bridge, communication progressively comes to an end. Somebody, maybe even both people, who attempted to cross the bridge were repelled back by the fire, forced to return to their own island, understanding their old partner no longer wishes to meet with them, at least not to the same level of intimacy as before. Eventually, the only form of communication is sending messages across the wind, shouting, and your vocal cords can only take so much. You can only say so much screaming at such a loud volume for such a short amount of time. And consequently, the difference in the detail of conversation with and without the bridge is staggering. At some point, communication becomes impossible, either because one or both parties are busy in their new lives, are disinterested in their previous partner, or are physically incapable of saying anything. Shout for too long across the islands and you'll lose your ability to speak. At some point, you have to recognize it's better to move on than to remain facing towards and calling your old friend through the ashes of the bridge. At some point, you've got to acknowledge that the bridge is gone, that this relationship is over and you may never see this person again, and that you have to move on. And that's okay. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. I mean, the one that links to the other side of the idiom spectrum definitely can. But sometimes, usually, that bridge that links to someone else can't be built again. And it's important that you accept this and move on with your life. This is Sooty Tooty signing out. Deuces.